My ideal gaming space is comfortable, stylish, and keeps me competitive no matter what I'm playing. The PowerA Spectra-enhanced wired controller for the Nintendo Switch ticks all the boxes. Officially licensed by Nintendo, it is an epic upgrade for your Switch, here to illuminate your gameplay these Easter holidays. There's tons of cool features in the Spectra-enhanced controller, all for a great price. Light up your space with 8 programmable LED colors, boost your advantage with 2 mappable buttons, reduce latency with a 3-meter snap lock cable, and plug in your headset with an inbuilt headphone jack. And you have more control than ever with precision-tuned analog thumbsticks with smooth anti-friction rings. Illuminate your gameplay these Easter holidays with the Spectra-enhanced wired controller for the Nintendo Switch, available at your local JB Hi-Fi store or online at jbhifi.com.au.
Hello and welcome to the Press Start podcast, Press Start Australia's weekly video game discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ewan, joined today by my fellow co-hosts and gamers. I think I did those words the different way around than I usually do, but it doesn't matter. We've got Kieron.
Hello.
James.
Hello.
I'm glad you got it.
I was like, which?
I did have a moment.
Causing the confusion, other James W.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
James, you might not be familiar to the podcast audience, so I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. You're on the show today for a special reason, which we'll get to in a moment, but tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe like what was your first game console and your favorite game of all time?
All right, cool. Yeah, look, I'm another James, another sort of freelance games writer from Australia. Pretty common story at this point, pretty common name as well. First game console was... I want to say it was the one that had like Alex the Kid on it, but it wasn't really mine. It was more of a just around the house. So I thought my first one was an N64 to be proper about it. And my favorite game of all time is probably a open world indie called Eastshade, which nobody's ever heard of. So it makes these conversations really hard. But
well, Kieran's heard of it.
Yeah, Kieran's on it. Yeah.
And what about your favorite game of the year so far? Trickier question.
So far, it's got to be Resi Remake, right? Like, I'm not sure.
You're in
anything
good company.
Yeah, so I've heard, yeah.
Immediately got approval of other
James
James.
thing. Yeah.
Well, on the show today, we're going to be talking about Star Wars Jedi Survivor, E3 getting cancelled, and the Australian government tackling loot boxes, which will no doubt be an interesting conversation. But first, Kieron, you have seen the Super Mario movie. How was it?
It was good. It was good. I was lucky enough to see it a couple of weeks ago, and nerve-wracking as well because my very first movie review. But I was talking to James earlier, and I think like the gist of it is essentially if you go into this with the expectation that you're about to watch 90 odd minutes of just wall-to-wall Mario references with little to connect everything together. Then you're gonna have a really, really good time, like a genuinely good time. Like if that's what you go in with, I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. It's like narratively, it's about as dense as a regular mainline Mario video game story. You know, you've got your Mario pals, and they're gonna go
in another castle.
Stop Bowser from doing his thing. There's a princesses in another castle joke in there. Yeah, it's just like a sequence, a loosely connected sequence of Mario and his friends going to different places from the Mario universe and doing all kinds of cool stuff. But it's definitely one that's like they've really kind of laser sharp designed it to appeal to such a broad range of audience, from like kids who loosely know the characters to adults who grew up with Mario since the arcade days. There's like it's I guess what you would call like a celebration of the entire Mario and Nintendo history as well. Like there's stuff, deep cuts going way back. So it's cool. I had a lot of fun with it.
I'm sure we've all got questions for you. Trying to avoid wading into spoilers all the same. But you've concerned me a little bit about the looseness of the story, stitching all these references together. Like, is there a compelling enough narrative to kind of get through it, or is it like merely serviceable?
Serviceable is probably the closer term I would use. Like, it's not bad.
Okay.
But
I like you're
it's
suspending
plot,
disbelief a little bit. Like
it's
to
like
just-
it's yeah, it's a kids movie. Like it's not subversive or like overly inventive or anything like that. It's what you would expect from. I mean, it's a collaboration between Nintendo and Illumination. So if you think of Despicable Me and the Minions and that level of storytelling, that's pretty much what you're getting on like the surface.
right.
Have you seen Sonic, Kieran?
Yes.
Anything like worse or better?
I'd say I probably prefer the Sonic movies because they
interesting.
do actually do a little bit with the character and to kind of separate themselves from.
I mean,
the
that's a
norm,
pretty high
so-
bar, though, right? Like people, I haven't seen the Sonic
Yeah.
movies, but I hear good things about them.
Yeah.
They're real movies,
Yeah, for sure.
basically.
That's all we ask for.
Yeah.
Are these real movies? How about the performances, Kieran? Like there's a lot of discussion lead up about the Chris Pratt bringing Mario to life. I was excited about Charlie. I wanted to say Charlie Kelly, but Charlie Day playing Luigi.
Yes.
We've got Jack Black playing Bowser. Like, how do they hold up?
For the most part, really, really good. I think it's obvious that Jack Black steals the show as Bowser.
Okay.
His narrative is probably the best part of the movie because he's in the overarching plot, like he's in a war against the Mushroom Kingdom. He's trying to take over the different realms, but his ultimate goal is just to have a fairy tale wedding with Peach. And he's obsessed with this wedding being perfect, and it's got to be perfect. And like that side of it was really cool. Probably one of the best moments in the movie involves him, which I won't spoil, but like I think people are gonna take that away with them, which is cool. Yeah, Charlie Day is really good. Seth Rogen is literally just Seth Rogen when he's playing Donkey Kong, but it works so well.
I mean, he's always Seth Rogen. That's literally all he ever does.
But yeah, it's just like I can't separate those two characters anymore. Like Donkey Kong and Seth Rogen are one and the same now.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Like even Chris Pratt, it's something I wrote about in the review, but I feel like he's been intentionally chosen to just be as unremarkable as possible as Mario. Because I think if it was someone doing a voice or someone kind of more exciting than Pratt, it might have taken away from
Sure.
everything else.
Okay.
So, I don't know. Like it works. Like I very, very quickly forgot who I was listening to. Like I was like, "Yep, cool. Mario's talking, whatever." Like it's fine, and everyone else around him is just great.
Right. Okay.
That was diplomatic.
Interesting. That was, yeah.
Thank you. I tried to be.
So I did have in my notes here the question, is it among the best video game adaptations? I feel like that's a no, but
I don't.
maybe that
I
there's so
think- I
few
think-
good video game adaptations that this would sit amongst them.
I think everyone should see it. Like I had a lot of fun with it. I don't want to sound like overly negative or anything. Like it was genuinely a good time. It's just.
And
It is what it is, kind of thing. It's far from like a cash grab. It's not just, we're gonna hit everyone with a bunch of nostalgia and take their money. Like it's genuinely well put together. It looks great. The soundtrack is really good for the most part. Like there's been a lot of love and care put into it. So it's definitely up there with some of my favorite video game adaptations.
And would you want a sequel?
I think so. I'd watch another one.
Not a
Sure.
raring endorsement, but I think positive or enough. I'm certainly gonna go and see it. I'm just kind of keen to go to the cinema. I haven't been to the cinema in a while. James, James B. I will say actually. I've got to distinguish between the two of you. Just keep me on my toes. James B. Are you rushing to the cinema to go and see this?
Yeah, we've booked.
Oh,
I feel like with the group we've got, we've almost got a whole cinema to ourselves. 'Cause it keeps growing.
Amazing.
Which will be exciting. But yeah, I've got
are you
on
going
Saturday.
in costume?
No, that was never something. Like I have a ghost face costume from recent, but that's like all I have. I don't know if that's the vibe. It is a nighttime session though, so hopefully no children ruining my adult movie. Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm keen. I like the cast. I'm keen to see Peach. Weirdly enough, like I want to see what they do with
She's
Peach.
pretty badass in it.
Yeah, she seems to be pretty cool. And I've since I watched the menu, I have a thing for Anya Taylor-Joy now. So I'm keen to see what she does as Peach. But yeah, like I'm keen, very excited. I want to ask a question, but I don't. Is there a post-credit sequence?
Oh,
Well, I can answer that. Oh, I feel like I can
Is there a
answer that.
tease?
There's
Yeah, I don't
there
know.
there is it's worth sticking around for all the way through the credits.
Yeah.
Okay.
How exciting.
Cool.
Well,
that's a good thing
I
to
will
note.
sit down for slightly longer, thanks to you.
Good.
Yeah.
Remind me, when again is it out?
It is out.
It's soon, right?
If
The
you're
5th
listening to this
of April, I
podcast
believe.
fresh, it's today.
Right.
But yeah, 5th of April, so Wednesday, today, whenever you're listening to
The
this.
day, the day
yesterday,
this
the day
episode
before,
is
whatever.
out.
And
Very
2023,
cool.
in case you're listening
2023.
to this next
In
year.
case you listen to this like next year.
You're catching up.
I don't know why. Hate to break it to you, E3 didn't happen, but we'll get to that later in the show. For now, we're going to be talking about Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which, James W., you got to travel all the way to LA and really just live out my dream of poking around Galaxy's Edge to play this game. I think you got given a lightsaber and all, which is
We did.
no doubt
Yes.
clouding your preview. No, I'm joking.
No, ethics and games journalism. Yes.
How did you find Oh, actually, you know what? Let me rewind. Firstly, how did you find the previous game? Did you enjoy Fallen Order?
I thought it was a really good attempt at something. I think that for a first try at like a Souls-like situation, and it also emulating like the cinematic language of a Star Wars, it was fine. I didn't love it though. I didn't quite connect with it, I think, the way that a lot of other people did. So coming into this one, I was apprehensive, I'd say.
Okay, interesting. You and I were already coming at this from like different perspectives, because I loved Fallen Order, but then I'm a diehard Star Wars fan, so maybe there's like a nostalgic sort of element playing into it. Okay, then how did you find what you were able to play of Survivor?
I came away really impressed by this thing. It's sort of like, it
yes.
feels like it was designed to address every concern someone like me would have had with Fallen Order, while also honoring what someone like you would have loved about Fallen Order. It is very much an expansion on what worked really well in that game, but also not a fix it, because I don't think the game was bad enough it needed to be fixed as such, but it is definitely a very natural progression of a lot of the ideas that they were playing with, and what has come out the other end is this like ambitious, very Empire Strikes Back, darker middle chapter is kind of what they're sort of pitching it as, and you definitely feel that in playing it.
What was it you got to play? Was it kind of fair way into the game or right from the start?
So we got a 3-hour slice, I would say maybe, I think it was an hour and a half into the game. So it was just after the initial mission. We found Cal and BD-1 on the Mantis, kind of like crashing onto the planet of Kobo, which I think is one of the first original planets you explore in the game. And you're effectively just, exploring Kobo, trying to find a way to fix the Mantis. And then a lot of other plot stuff happens that we are embargoed away from talking about at all, which is very unfortunate because it was great, but
Okay.
it's what was there was a lot of this sort of open zone exploration on this Kobo planet.
James W. No, I'm getting confused again. James B. He's getting so pissed off at me as well. James B. How did you find the storytelling with the first game? Was it something you enjoyed?
Look, I thought it was fine, but I'm like a post Disney Star Wars hater. So like I don't know. I was just happy not to have like a Battlefront game and to have a single player game that didn't suck, where you played as a Jedi. I did like the plot. Like I did think they could have obviously done more with it, and I think towards the end they definitely did a bit of the I guess nostalgia baiting they like to do with Star Wars. All the glop shido stuff that you hear about every time something happens.
I think it's glop shido actually. Just as a Star Wars fan, I have to correct you.
Actually, I think you'll find it's Glop Shadow.
But yeah, I really liked it. And as somebody who has a very cursory, like, I guess, engagement with the Star Wars world, like I've seen the movies and stuff, but not much more. It's like seeing all of the Night Sisters stuff, is it Night Sisters and all of that, and it's like that was super interesting and very fresh for me, and I couldn't help but feel like, why are we focusing on this shit in like the main trilogies? But overall, I did like it. I thought they could have probably done more. Like if we were going to get deep into it, like I thought that they could have done more, say, for the relationship between Cal and what's her name? Is it Sarah?
Siri?
The Deborah
I always
Wilson
mess
character.
up the pronunciation.
So like I thought they could have done a lot more of that, but then I didn't really go into a Star Wars game expecting that. So what I got, I really enjoyed, like gameplay wise. and that definitely took the forefront for me.
Yeah, I think I'd kind of
yeah.
echo your sentiment in that, like, I kind of enjoyed the overall structure of the story and the kind of narrative they're telling, but like the individual kind of character beats, like, didn't really hit for me. Maybe with the exception of that one sister that kind of is the kind of
main,
central.
like the second sister.
My memory's failing me. Yeah.
Yeah, like she was great, and that was going to be like one of my questions, I guess, for this, for James, is like, did you get a sense of, is there a villain in this? Like, is there a bad guy, or is it?
Yes, very, very definitively yes. They are just one of the things I can't talk about, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And how about like the cast of like supporting characters of that sort of ensemble cast? Are they kind of a bit more involved this time?
Yeah. I think one of the major things I came away noticing is that this world feels much more fleshed out. The dialogue and the script writing is a lot sharper and much more self-assured this time. Performances are also just better across the board as well. It feels like a studio that's kind of like found its rhythm with its storytelling. And so because of that, the world feels very inhabited and lived in. There's a lot more NPCs just in these spaces now. They'll give you quests. They'll tell you random lore tidbits. There's Kobo is kind of like a Western-ish kind of like cattle ranch area. And so you get a lot of like very like country twangy people being like, oh, come ride my space horse. It's very, it's sweet. It's very Star Warsy. And there's a couple of interactions that it's hard to talk about, but I will say that in the first game I often found as if it was telling me that I should feel a certain way about a dialogue exchange, whereas in this I just felt it organically, like they are pretty confident in what they're doing here.
Yeah, you've articulated it much better than I was able to, but that's what I felt like the first game was missing.
I think
exactly
like,
as you put it there. It's like kind of telling you how to feel it rather than actually just letting you feel it.
In the footage and stuff, it does look alive a lot more. Like I didn't even think about it for Fallen Order, but in Fallen Order, it feels like everything has been abandoned. Even like there's that one planet where like there's all these houses, but like no one's in them; they're just all locked. Whereas like walking through the cantina in this B-roll for Survivor, like it does feel a lot more alive. And even being able to pick music, really cool. I know he doesn't exist yet, but they should add Max Rebo songs.
James,
how were the environments that you got to? Oh no, sorry, Kieron, go for it.
No, I was just gonna say, like, while we're talking about the first game, obviously being a direct sequel, one of the things I was curious about, and you did kind of speak to this in the preview, but you're not kind of like, Cal doesn't suddenly come down with like a case of amnesia and forgets all his moves and all that kind of stuff, right? Like you pick it up with everything. Or at least with most of his Jedi abilities. How do you feel like that's going to go for people who maybe didn't play the first game or played the first one at launch and haven't touched it in a while? Was that like onboarding process? Did that seem pretty good?
Yes. I mean, it's hard to tell because we weren't thrown into the very beginning of the game. There was a tutorial section, but it was just built for this demo. So it's hard to tell sort of what they're going to be doing in the final build. They did specifically talk about wanting to start the game with no dead buttons, basically, because you start Fallen Order with not much to do. Whereas in this one, they want to start you with a pretty basic pool of things that I personally haven't played that first one since it came out, and I remembered things pretty quickly. It's all very standard, like, your face buttons are push, pull, and confuse, or whatever the third power is. So I think that it's a pretty soft entry point, and then the more complex stuff is in those skill trees that they've expanded out quite a bit.
I think that's a really neat premise, and something like, it is like such a beaten cliche now that you kind of go through some sort of regression and
they forget all their powers.
All their moves fall out of their pockets.
And all their lightsabers. Like,
Cal has PTSD again.
And it was a frustration playing like God of War Ragnarok last year, and because I had replayed the first game in the lead up, and I was like, I want these things because I've just played them and got into the habit of using them that I now can't do. But yeah, I'm in the same boat, James, right? Like it was not since launch that I played Fallen Order, so hopefully I'm able to get my memory jogged nice and easily. Going back to the environments that you were talking about previously, how different are they this time? Is the design kind of a bit more open? Is there room for exploration still? How is the approach different, if at all?
Yeah, so they're kind of pitching it as it's semi-open world. I think open zone is sort of the new hot topic that we're all sort of talking about, where we've decided
Thanks,
that,
Sonic.
open worlds are a bit too much, so let's bring it back in. And so here we started off in a fairly linear platforming section, which was very Fallen Order. And then you get to a plateau and you suddenly have your Breath of the Wild moment where you're looking out over this massive expanse where there's, the town is off in the distance. There's a farm off that way. There's craters over there you can explore. And so you get a very big sense of like, okay, I can just pick a direction and go. And based on what I could see other players doing and what I was doing, every direction is viable. You'll eventually be sort of golden path back towards the town. But you can just go and do a puzzle room if you want to go into a puzzle room. Screw around with the combat, do whatever you want, really. And so that sense of openness combined with that like lived in NPCs everywhere, a bit more of a vibe to the world. It just makes it feel kind of like a little Star Wars biome to explore, which, as someone who's always wanted that from a game, it was very exciting to see.
That's cool. And is there an opportunity they're going to fall down a hole and encounter a really difficult to defeat toad like there was in Fallen Order? I like so many people, fell into that quite literal trap.
Yes.
How did you find it? Like, is there difficulty to the game as well?
Yeah, so I think there was 6 difficulty options from memory. I left it on just like default Jedi Knight, just because I wanted to see sort of what the intended experience was. And I struggled with a couple of the bosses, but I also found moment-to-moment combat to be very fluid and easy to pick up. I think it struck a good balance, but I think if you want to push for a harder version, it's absolutely going to be there for you. I found a... what is it called? The big monster from Return of the Jedi that everyone loves. Rancor, yeah. They very early on pitch you against a Rancor, and that thing knocked me out in one hit, and I was like, oh, haha, what a fun, like, boss joke. Turns out everyone else was beating it. I was just, not skilled enough. But that's fine. Turns out I was the joke. But there's definitely some good little kind of, like, blips of difficulty in there if you want to engage with them.
Yeah. I imagine that optional bosses will still be a feature of the game as well. Cool. If no one else has any more questions, then I will ask one final one. And that is kind of final impressions. Do you see Survivor being amongst one of your favorite games this year and a Game of the Year contender? Does it have that sort of pedigree at this stage based off your initial impressions?
I would think so. Yeah, I think the jump to sort of just doing it on current generation hardware exclusivity makes it like it looks incredible. We didn't really talk about it, but like the combat has a specific bespoke skill trees for everything you do now, and so there's a lot of ways you can like sort of customize your play style.
And like different stances come into it an awful lot as well,
there's like
right?
5 stances in the game, I think. So we only had 3 of them in the build, but then we got to watch one of the combat designers play like a late portion of the game where like he was using like Deadeye from Red Dead basically, like with a blaster. It was an absurd level
of like the blaster stance, is that right?
Yeah, blaster stance looks
sick.
incredible. There's the crossguard hilt that like Kylo Ren has in the new movies. There's a lot of different ways that they're sort of pitching it as player customization.
I'm so excited right now.
You and bricked up right now.
Yeah. I am bricked up, and I now know what that means.
Can we not ever say that again?
Sorry. But yeah, no, I guess to answer your question, yeah, like everything I saw of it hints at a game that is kind of like very much hitting its stride. I think this is going to be like, I put this in my preview, but like I do think Respawn has made its Empire Strikes Back here, and that's very exciting.
Yeah, that is quite the quote as well. I'm very, very excited. Cool. Well, let's move on. Something else I was excited about, but alas, no more, was E3 2023. It has officially been cancelled with a cancellation email reading that the 2023 version simply did not garner the sustained interest necessary to execute it in a way that would showcase the size, strength, and impact of our industry. Kieron, perhaps to come to you first. Was this inevitable at this stage?
I don't want to say yes, but I guess so. It definitely feels like what was once like a cohesive whole has just been fragmented by, Jeff Keighley's Summer Game stuff, all the live stream stuff that started picking up once the pandemic hit. Like it's been splintered into all these different things, and people kind of still expect all of that, and then also a show to like beat all shows on top. I don't think that's viable at all. It sucks because I definitely think there's still scope for an event that brings people physically together. I mean, we've seen like PAX Australia even last year in its kind of like slightly more limited form was still massively popular because people just want to be together and celebrate gaming. But I think like E3 is probably not the place for that anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a shame. Like I've never been to E3. I don't know if any of you have. Do we have anyone that's attended E3? Which I think is quite telling in of itself, right? Like maybe Shannon on the team might have been the only sort of one, but certainly over the last kind of few years, maybe even longer than that, it's kind of lost its relevancy. And we've found that we can actually kind of do most of the coverage just by staying locally, albeit writing articles in the middle of the night. James B, that is how it will come to you. Can E3 make a comeback? And if so, what would need to change for there to be a 2024 E3?
I don't really know, because I feel like everything to do with people pulling out is behind the scenes stuff that we don't know about. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of people were in, even like Ubisoft pulling out, like who knows what the terms are in terms of like how you can participate.
I've wondered that. Like, is it a lack of announcements, or is it the cost of putting it on?
I remember before COVID, maybe, or there was something where like, I think Sony said, we didn't agree with what they're trying to do this year or something, which made me think there must be some kind of way that it's being organized specifically. But like, as somebody who doesn't know any of that, to me, like, you know, Sony can do a self-directed state of play in whatever week they want, and then they own that week. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's their week. And that doesn't cost. They don't have to ship. They don't have to send employees somewhere. They don't have to get a vertical slice ready for an arbitrary date of their game. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's just so many other, like, especially with the pandemic, they've realized that they can do all this shit themselves for less money, and people will cover it the same. That's why, like, for me, like, obviously I've never been, to me it's the same. I watched it online anyway, so watching Summer Games Fest is literally this. I'm sitting in the same spot with the same snacks on my same computer. Like,
we'll talk about what snacks later.
In the same Discord, muting everybody because I'm trying to cover something. But like, overall, like, to me that's the same. But for it to come back, I don't really know what they would have to do. They'd have to make it enticing, and they'd have to be able to like guarantee. I think back in the day, like you could guarantee a certain level of like circulation was what they used to say. But you know what I mean? Like, you know that all these people were going and seeing this. But now, like, you don't know if that's even going to happen. Yeah. And you can probably get the same impact / effect from whatever. Yeah. I will miss like those moments, like remember, like the Wii Music one. I don't know if you guys remember that, but the Wii Music Nintendo conference was like disastrous, but it was so fun to watch because it was such a nightmare and it was live. And even like the random shit, like I remember with Rage 2, they brought out that band that sang I can't even remember who it was. I think it was someone famous, but like just those weird like celebrity video game crossover moments. I'll miss those. But to go back to your question, no, I don't know what they can do. I think they should give up.
It's interesting because like E3, I guess, like came from a time where like the industry as a whole was like still trying to get recognition and kind of like build awareness, I guess, among some more mainstream audiences. Like, it was the kind of one trade show a year that you might have like, you know, someone that has a byline at a newspaper goes to, and they write their one article about video games that year.
Legitimate press, quote unquote.
Quote unquote legitimate press. Whereas that's kind of a bygone era now. And there are people whose like full time gig is writing about video games and cover a conference no matter what time of year it's happening. Which I think it's a shame because for so long like it was a mecca of like the video game industry, and as like aspiring journalist, it was like always the big event you'd want to go to until you go to a fair few and get burnt out by like the just insane amount of work that you have to do in that week, I suppose. But yeah, I just don't think like there's a need for a trade event anymore. Like, maybe if it was more about community and something more like PAX that is about gamers kind of coming together, it might have some new form there, and I think that's the kind of direction that we're heading. But having a big event centered around like previews, announcements, that kind of thing, I think you're right, James. There's just like no real need for that anymore. In saying that, though, James W., to come to you now, like, what does the July period in video games look like now? Like, do we expect that to still be a big month of announcements, but people doing their own events, or is that kind of big mid-year announcement period likely to kind of just be dispersed throughout the year?
Well, I think, like, you know, with what Keely's doing, he's effectively created his own well of gravity during that same period of time, right? Where
Yeah.
you know, you should that Summer Games Fest exists to take this place, essentially. And so I think that could do a reasonable job. I just feel like, you know, with the lack of having physical press presence at these sort of events, right? You know, so we can do these Nintendo Directs and the Sony Directs and whatever you want to call them. But in doing so, you remove the ability for the press to effectively do their job sometimes. So we just get like a very clean cut marketing message, which is great for pure information. But I feel like just from a pure representation of some of these things on websites and stuff, you miss a little bit of something. And so I do wonder if not having that during this kind of release hype period, you don't get as critical a lens on some of these things, I suppose. So I could definitely see that changing the landscape a tiny bit. But again, everything is just shifted to this direct-to-consumer kind of marketing at this point anyway. So I think it's going to look much as it has for the past few years. I think E3 hasn't been particularly relevant for a while anyway, which is, I find to be sad, but it kind of is what it is.
Yeah, I think the preview opportunity though is like definitely something that is a bit of a miss in all this, and I've kind of gained like a newfound appreciation for previews. I think I kind of lost that appreciation for a bit, but we've also been doing more on this side and doing the video previews as well over our YouTube channel. And it's kind of reminded me like how much interest I had in those like back in the day. But I think there became like such a dialogue around, just like wait for the full review, wait for it to come out. Now like we see everyone's kind of thoughts on TikTok with like gameplay clips up on a game releasing. But I think there is kind of something to be said about like getting hands-on with the game months out of its release, getting a feel for what direction it is, like maybe having a dialogue with a developer. And we've seen some of that kind of open dialogue happening around like Suicide Squad or something, albeit in a very public sort of way. But yeah, I don't quite know like what my final thought on that is, but like I think for critics to not be able to get some time with a game well ahead of launch and kind of start articulating some of those thoughts and kind of putting their thoughts out there for gamers to read, like I think there's something to that I worry might go by the wayside. I don't know if it's radically like changing the games or like shifting expectations around them, but yeah, I'd hate to see like previews disappear. And that's not just because we've heard your wonderful preview of Survivor today. Final thoughts, Kieron. E3, are you happy to see it go? Could you care? Would you hope to see it come back next year?
I'm unhappy to see it go, but I don't think we need it to come back in the same form, at least.
Yeah. Cool. That's definitive. I like it. Let's move on to a very different topic, and that is loot boxes affecting games classifications. This comes the way of some new reform proposal by the Australian government here in our home country, that games containing paid loot boxes would carry a minimum rating of M, therefore being mature and not recommended for players under the age of 15, and any game that contains simulated gambling immediately bearing an R18 plus classification. Quite a big shakeup, as mentioned in the article over on the website. Like, it would mean that something like FIFA, which has kind of its card packs and whatever, like getting an automatic M rating, not the kind of GPG that we're currently accustomed to. James B, maybe to first come to you. Do you think this is a wise move on behalf of the Australian government?
I don't think it matters. Like, no, like I'm not even
Very
being a
valid
dick. Like,
point.
I'm not just trying to be like a dickhead. Like, I genuinely don't think. Like, I think like somebody sees kids buy GTA all the time.
Yeah.
Like that's an R18 game, and
like how many under 18-year-olds?
I've been at a store when someone will say to a parent, "This is R18. Is that okay?" It's like, yeah, it's no worse than what they see on TV or something like that. Like it's
Yeah. They're watching Game of Thrones anyway. It doesn't matter.
And that, yeah, and that's like R18. Do you know what I mean? Like, if FIFA's
Yeah.
all of a sudden got a blue M on it, like, no one's gonna, like, is it blue? Are we saying M? Sorry, or MA?
Yeah.
It was
Yeah. So for
the
clarification,
M where they
like,
can
you
still
don't-
buy it.
Yeah, you
M
don't
is
need
M,
to be
M
with a
has
parental
always
guardian
been
to
an
buy an M.
advisory rating
Yeah.
in Australia. So, like, it's not even enforced. Like, what's the point
No.
at that
Yeah.
point? Like, I don't, like, people, what about Roblox? Like, as an example, like, that's
Yeah.
more predatory and more exploitative, but that's
mean-
not even rated. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like,
The idea of these classifications
Jesus.
is kind of redundant in the fact that like so many people just buy games digitally now as well. Like you go on Steam, no one is checking
change
your
the date.
age.
No, well, don't
Like-
do that. I'm not telling anyone to do that. But, like, it's not enforced, obviously.
Yeah, it's
like,
yeah. I apologize. There are safeguards around it somewhat, but they're very easy to work around. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
and presumably something similar exists on the PlayStation Store and
The
and then
PlayStation
on
Store
Xbox,
literally
but-
is like it's full of the PlayStation Store is literally full of games that are like hentai slots. Like anyone can literally just like go and play hentai slots if they want to.
even
I'm
on
saying
Switch.
slot- I'm
not
saying
even on
slots, by
PlayStation,
the way.
On Switch, like, people... Oh, I thought... Well, Switch has got both. Like, it's honestly... Like, and they're like $3 each. And people think Switch
Yeah.
is a family console. But, like,
I do think you need
Go
to
on
kind of
eShop, it's
intervene
not.
to like some extent. Like,
I know
I
what
don't
you
want to
mean,
go into examples, but
I
like there
can't
are
help-
examples of like pretty heinous content that's made its way to like the App Store or to consoles or whatever. And like I think you do need to kind of say, okay, enough's enough. Like we need to regulate this. And I'm pleased to see the government at least acknowledging the problematic nature of loot boxes and simulated gaming. Like this kind of reform is also extending to like online poker services and stuff as well. Like it encompasses a few things, but I'm pleased to see them tackle it. But yeah, like you're ultimately right. Like people are just gonna find ways around it.
Definitely.
Does that
Not
render
even
it null
around
and
it.
void?
It's
I
not
don't know.
even,
But
it's not even a barrier. It's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems very almost performative.
yeah,
And I also think, like, gambling, like Pokemon cards, like, they're gambling in a way. Like, kids are getting
Sure.
hooked on. Do you know, like, it's the same
Yeah.
thing. It just is
actually kind of like a physical loot box. Or
It is.
anything.
It's just a
literally
physical loot
is.
box,
Like,
Yeah.
Like,
Your school fair lucky dip, get that out of here.
but yeah, I, don't
think
know.
it's I think they're probably like the sentiment is good, but like because they obviously want to tackle problem gambling, and I think that's good. And obviously I don't know too much on the topic, and it's pretty serious, so I don't want to like misrepresent it. But I feel like they're speaking to the wrong people as well, because if they're speaking to parents, I feel like that's the age group where the like problem gambling is largely a problem as well. They're trying to nip it in
Yeah.
the bud early, but they're not speaking to kids. They're being like, hey, this game's even cooler now because it's M or it's R. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
I think it's the right idea and probably the wrong approach. And I feel like the research coming from like, you know, local governments or national governments on the effects of these things is probably moving slower than the research someone like EA is putting in to how to actually exploit people that way. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the marketing moves, you know, the money moves quicker than our government probably does on those things.
Yeah. James W, unless you have kids, I think I'm right, assuming none of us are parents here. So,
Oh,
and if
God,
so,
no.
maybe we needed Brody. But yeah, I sort of feel like it's the kind of thing like rather than slapping a different label on the box, it's the kind of thing you need to like sit down and like talk about with your kids, or like try and make them understand the value of money and like what they're doing by spending cash on loot boxes and the kind of return that you may or may not get on it, and understand the sort of value of it. And like, yeah, like to your point, like I don't think a different colored label on the box is gonna do that job on behalf of parents or teachers or whoever. Yeah,
It also, like, I have
tricky one.
friends who have kids, and sometimes something like this will pop up. Like, they want to buy that, something like that.
Yeah.
And then they say no, and then they chuck a tantrum, and then they get it anyway. So it's like, I don't know. Like, I also, like, I know it's
Tells
also,
you.
yeah, like,
you really feel.
I'm not going to name who they are, obviously. I don't even, they
I want
might be
names.
listening. No. But like, and it's like, yeah, I think about like the thing with like sit down and speak to your kids about it, but most of the time the kids aren't paying. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's another But this is obviously not a parent. This is another spin-off we can do, a parenting podcast from
Yeah,
for
that'd be
people who don't
hilarious.
have
Yes.
children.
Parenting tips for people that don't have kids. Yeah.
From 4Gamers.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think
I
think
raised a pretty
Ewan,
healthy
what you're
family in The
saying-
Sims. Know what I'm talking about.
No one died in the first 10 days. I think what you're saying, Ewan, though, where you sit down and speak to kids about it, I just don't think they have that understanding yet.
No,
unless
maybe not until they
it's
start
their
earning
money.
money
But
of
then
their
at
own.
that point,
Yeah.
even at that point, if it is their money, they're so young. Like, do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, I have my eyes water when I think about how much people spend on 2K My Career or fucking FIFA Ultimate Team or even
Yeah.
Roblox. It's ridiculous.
And I suppose, parents themselves, aren't guilt-free. I mean...
No, of course not.
Like,
you should know what you're buying, for one.
Yeah.
That's... Yeah.
I'm not innocent of spending money on... I don't know if I've ever bought a loot box. I mean, I've certainly bought cosmetic items in games, but I don't know if I've ever just spent money on...
I've bought
random
shitty
unlockables.
on-disc DLC for a Street Fighter game back in the 360 era, but I knew what I was
Did you not know
doing.
what was on the disc? Was it randomized?
No, we knew. It was 100 kilobytes. You knew it was on the disc, but what could you do?
No, but did you know what you were getting? Because the idea of loot boxes, right? Is you don't know
Oh, no,
what
you
you're
did.
getting out
Sorry,
of it.
yeah, you did. It was all back then. It was all this is the costume you get for who.
Yeah.
It was definitely it was still shit, and I knew it was shit, but I wanted.
There was
to
an
have a cool
interesting
horse
line
costume.
about this on Mythic Quest. I'm back watching season 3 at the moment. If you've not watched Mythic Quest, highly recommend going and watching it. By the way, but they were talking about the commercialization of video games, and they say that just people kind of forget about it and argue about whatever the next thing, and gradually season passes and loot boxes and stuff are accepted, and people just worry about what's next. They point to horse armor as an example as well. Obviously, very much on the basis of real debates, but maybe it is me kind of forgetting that argument, but I don't have a lot of issue with horse armor now because you pay, what you're getting for the payment that they're asking.
It's a one for one. Yeah.
It's a one for one. But
I think
loot boxes, there is
always
definitely a
problem.
risk involved.
When you might sit there, you've put $100 into this game, and you don't have the thing you want. I think that's probably there should be some kind of protection there, in terms of guaranteedness. I know in Europe, I think somewhere in Europe, there's they have to say the actual
Yeah, they have to
percentages or
disclose the
something.
rate. Yeah.
Yeah, for what you can get in each box.
I've
or
seen a
something,
lot
but
of
it's
games
still-
adopt that now as standard practice.
Yeah, I think they have to be able to release it everywhere. But
Yeah.
yeah, still, yeah, I know what you mean. It's shit. It's it's built on top of FOMO and that. And when we think about FOMO, it's not rational. It's your emotions, and you don't think so.
Yeah. Well, we better move on because we've got one more meatier topic to discuss, and that is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Thinking back a little bit longer in the week that's been now, we saw a 10 minutes plus of new gameplay. Tears of the Kingdom revealed a whole heap of stuff. James W., to come to you first on this. What are the new game mechanics that we saw in the gameplay trailer took your fancy? What interested you the most?
I mean, Meat Arrow, obviously. I don't know what else you really need from this game. No, look, I thought this looked magical. The fusion concept, the idea that sort of anything in this already physics-based world can now just be smacked together with Link's goo. That's a guaranteed. Yeah, look, all right, Kieran.
Kieran made a face, everyone.
Yeah. No, I thought it looked really cool. That attaching of the eye to an arrow and it becomes a homing arrow, genius little touches like that.
That got me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really plays into the environmental puzzle solving as well that I think made Breath of the Wild so cool. And yeah, likewise with the vehicles. I think new ways to traverse these environments are always gonna interest me, and I think Breath of the Wild kind of definitely established the standard and how people kind of traverse open world. So to see them kind of challenge that thinking once more is quite neat. But yeah, personally still unconvinced they're kind of doing enough to build on Breath of the Wild. I don't know if they can quite replicate the magic that was that game, but James B., I know we haven't always seen eye to eye on that. How are you feeling about the new gameplay that's come out for Tears of the Kingdom?
We literally have agreed on this
Oh,
before, Ewan.
you're on my side. Gosh, I should be
No, I'm
spoiling you more.
not, because I'm annoyed. Because I'm petty. Last year was a lot of sequels to games I loved that I didn't love as much. And
Yeah.
yeah, you probably think about that, and it's pretty obvious. But I can think of at least 2 games that were like that. But
Dying Light,
this year,
Horizon for me would be 2.
Yeah. Anyway, doesn't matter. We don't have to name names. I don't want to upset Shannon because he's not here. But Breath of the Wild. I've made it pretty clear. I really didn't like Breath of the Wild as much as everyone else. I thought I can respect why people like it. I'm just like a very old man Zelda purist. I really want dungeons and items, but seeing this footage and stuff of this new footage which is kind of what I've been wanting to see for a while. The weapon fusion stuff is amazing, but I also feel like it's something that you yes, they had some pretty cool examples in the video, but you really can't appreciate it until you get your hands on it. So I'm excited to actually play with that, break it open, see what I can do. But yeah, I still have the questions that I still have are still there. I would love to know if there are, say, dungeons and all that kind of stuff, just something a little bit more compelling than what the Divine Beasts were. I'm definitely more positive now after watching this footage. Even Ascend as a power. I saw a tweet from someone, I can't remember who, said I don't really get the point of Ascend, but to me, that's a huge game changer. How fucking annoying was climbing in Breath of the Wild? It was the most annoying thing.
Thank you.
No.
Music to my ears.
I take it back.
You invigorated me. Panic.
No.
I just hate how everyone. I've said this before on the podcast, I'm sure, but I hate how everyone points to the climbing as
It's not the climbing that was the issue. No, it's not the climbing that was the issue. It's the stamina shit that was the issue. I hated that. You get halfway up a mountain and then you just fall down like a dead bug. I really like the idea that Ascend lets you just do that with nothing. I think that's a small thing, but it's a huge quality of life improvement, and that will have some application to puzzles and stuff, I'm sure, as the final game appears. But yeah, I think I'm keener than I was, which I didn't think would be possible. I was pretty ready to write it off, and even the weapon fusion stuff. I feel that's a really smart way to kind of offset the weapon degradation complaints that people have. I understand why it's there, but I still hated it. And but I think that having this weapon fusion system, it's an answer to that without completely. I like when people address problems in game design without removing it. And I think that's a really, really smart way of doing that. So yeah, I feel like I just spat all my brain out onto the screen, but I think overall I am more excited for sure.
That's a good way of putting it, because the kind of stamina management, the temperature management, the weapon management of the game was I felt kind of I wasn't enamored with that, and I felt like it was getting in the way of the things I was enjoying about the game, just the kind of creativity over in the world, or the kind of combat that was feeling rather fresh for a Zelda entry. So yeah, I like that they kind of reimagined that while still kind of finding new ways to manage the physics of the world. I thought the kind of time reversal sort of mechanic to get up into the Sky Islands and stuff was super neat as well. And it's kind of opens up so many doors to different puzzle solving. Yeah. I'm glad I'm not going to have to be worrying about weapon degradation so much if I can just slap a rock on it and make a weird homemade mace.
Problem solved.
Yeah. Cool. Sounds like we're all a bit more chipper about it then.
Which is a
Sort
big
of fair.
achievement.
Yeah, that is a
considering
big...
how I was feeling.
Well, I mean, you didn't ask for my opinion, but I'll give it anyway.
Please do, Kieron.
Yes.
Doors wide open.
No, I think I feel pretty much the same. Similar to James. I really want to see where the bespoke content is and what they've designed into the game, as opposed to just the tools that they give you to self-direct.
Yeah,
because that's something I did struggle with in Breath of the Wild, was being given all this choice and all these things I could do, but I don't. You tell me what to do, please, just for a second. And if
I
they
don't
do
want
incorporate
it to be linear, but I know what you mean. Like,
But if there's like, if
100
they're giving
shrines
you,
isn't it compared to
yeah, if they're giving you like, hey, build vehicles or like make weapons out of stuff, like I want there to be a reason to do that other than it's cool.
Yeah.
So that's
Or
what I'm
getting
like,
from like point A to B, like you want to see it integrated into like a dungeon or something, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's I think that's like the last piece of the puzzle that I'm hoping that they sort of signal before it comes out.
I think you could probably make an argument for the fact that a lot of Breath of the Wild systems only existed because they were cool, though, right? Like, James does not want
It's
to
a
hear
mic
it.
drop over there.
Fuck up.
No, it's a very like systems driven.
Oh, 100%.
Self-experience, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I enjoyed a lot about the first game. And so, like, them just adding more systems into that, I think is a pretty natural extension of that. Although I do fully understand, like, why you're after a bit more of an authored experience from it.
I want both. I know that's greedy, but like we had one last time. Now give me the other one.
I agree.
Yeah.
You're
I
all good.
I
You're
don't
not
think that's
chimping
too much to
James.
ask for, honestly.
Yeah, I just feel like I've always said that with the first game, like they've got such solid systems, and I didn't even think they could make them better, and they have, which is great. But then I want to now see all of that put into something. Like, give me this giga dungeon that I have to be really fucking smart to finish, which I know that, like, we don't want to do that in games as much anymore, because you want people to finish them. But, like, that big open world, like you could do some cool optional stuff that isn't 30 seconds, like the shrines. You know? I don't know.
Or just like have more challenging environment to navigate, other than you're gonna have to take a lot of stew with you to climb up this massive mountain. Like really gonna lean into the new systems they've created. And
I also want more
Now you
enemy
can build
types
it-
while we're at it.
Yes.
I really hope it's not
Yeah.
just robots or whatever they call them, constructs.
Constructs.
I don't know.
All right.
I know I'm being unreasonable and I'm being harder on this than I would
No,
be
I
any
think-
other game. But
We've got like they've set
Yeah.
themselves a high standard, and so kind of it's up to them to live up to it now. I think we ought to go into it expecting a lot, because they're the ones that set that bar. Anyhow, I digress, and we're going long. So just quickly, I want to ask you: have you been seeing these Last of Us Part 1 PC glitches? These are unreal. Kieran, have you been on TikTok and watching some of these?
I have been. I tried to collect some into an article, but new ones keep popping up.
Yeah.
And most of them involve Ellie. Most of them involve Ellie's character model just freaking the fuck out.
I think my personal favorite has been the one like where in a cutscene they randomly just get wet, the
wet.
character models. Yeah. And Joel would just like start dripping as if he's like sweating profusely.
A real intense conversation. They're all just like,
Yeah. James W., how does this happen for like a PC port of like such a revered game?
It's
This wrong?
so bizarre, right? Because like they've had such a good run with their PC ports, like, you know, almost critically acclaimed, kind of like, like set these games free on really high-end systems, and then there's just this. It's really confusing.
Yeah. I guess the world of PC porting is a challenging space that I know and understand very little about. Not as easy as a copy and paste and slide the resolution scale up. Hopefully they get it fixed soon. Keeping things quick though, I do have a rapid fire question for you all. There are reports circulating that the PSVR 2 has only sold a couple 100,000 units so far, far lower than the reported 2 million units PlayStation supposedly targeted. So yes, no, too early to say. Those are your three options. Is the PSVR 2 a failure? James B.
too early to say, I think.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree, but I'm fearing
Like,
it's a
calm down
yes.
If anyone says yes, in my opinion.
You're looking down on anyone that says yes.
No, I'm telling everyone to calm down if they say
Oh.
yeah.
Kieran, what's your answer?
no. I know it's
No.
rapid fire, but I think in terms of comparison to the install base of the PS4,
Never is rapid fire. Like,
I think no, but just shut up. You make it longer. I think like if you compare the PS4 and PS5 install bases at the time of the VR release headsets for both platforms, I think it's actually tracking
Sure.
better.
That's a good argument. I like it. And James W.
Yes, because I'm dramatic.
Oh, nice. I was hoping someone would be.
I like that.
All right, now it's time for what the Wiki, the Press Start podcast game show, where the previous week's winner reads part of a Wikipedia page for an unknown game, and we, the contestants, must guess the game. A point is awarded for each correct guess, and the round ends after a person scores 2 points. Currently in the lead, we have Brody on 9 points, James, myself, and Kieron tied with 7 points each, Shannon on 5 points, and entering the competition, we have James W. currently nil point. Finally get to say
Congratulations.
yes.
Done.
As
You earned
last
that.
week's winner, Brody ought to have been in the hosting chair today, but Kieron is making up a debt and hosting today instead. I think I covered him in the past, so this is payback. But Kieron, take it away. The show is yours.
Yeah, cool. This might end up being a very easy round for some people. I don't know. I randomly generated these games, but we'll
All
go
Resident
anyway.
Evil games.
They're all. It's just Star Wars. No, so here we go. Since the game has a large survival horror focus, the player often has little ammunition. It's not and must scavenge for supplies from caches or dead bodies. An essential supply is pre-war 5.45 by 39 millimeter ammunition. I don't know how I'm supposed to pronounce that properly, which is also the main currency.
James.
Oh,
Main currency.
James.
I think it was other James that got it. Before I
It
did.
was other
Metro
James that got it.
2033.
It is Metro 2033. You got
Well
the right one
done.
as well. I was worried that we were going to go sequel
scared.
back and forth again.
Yeah, it was only 3, so hopefully it wouldn't have taken long. Maybe Ewan.
James up to 8 points.
Game number 2 is, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but the game primarily consists of first-person shooter and driving segments, with the player using their vehicle to explore the world and travel between missions. Combat is undertaken from a first-person perspective. The player is armed with a variety of upgradable firearms, as well as a crossbow and
James.
boomerang. James.
No.
Far Cry 3.
No.
James.
James.
Other James.
He was quick.
Is it Rage 2?
It's not Rage 2.
Ewan? Is it Rage?
It's Rage.
No!
Yes. Cherry pick the point. You love to see it.
All right. All right. We'll keep going. Although
I
the
was
character
definitely going the
gains,
Far Cry route. Sorry.
you could have. Although the character gains access to a revolver, a shotgun, a bolt gun, a flamethrower, and a stun baton over the course of the game, it emphasizes evasion over direct combat by providing limited ammunition. The player can also craft useful items by collecting schematics and different materials.
James.
James.
Is it the Callisto Protocol? No.
Oh.
Could you just say yes?
Items include EMP detonators, noisemakers, Molotov cocktails, and pipe bombs to
Oh my
help the
God.
player deal with enemies.
Let me back in.
If no one else has a guess, I think we can let James back in. Maybe.
I'm tempted just to have a shot in the
The
dark, but no.
enemy
James.
is afraid of fire, so using flame weapons forces it to retreat.
I don't know what it is.
No, I'm useless.
James, it's yours.
Is it Alien Isolation, Kieran?
It's Alien Isolation.
Wouldn't have got there. Well done, James.
Fantastic. Best game
Nice
ever.
work.
Kind of.
Catching
Top 10.
Brody
Kind
back
of.
up. James is up on 9 points. I
Lovely.
moved up.
It's been a long
1 to
time
8
since I won.
that time. Well done, James. You'll
I feel
be
like you win
taking
every
over
time I do it.
The hosting next week.
Maybe that's on purpose.
That was a good assortment of games, though. I liked
It
that.
was.
Yeah.
It
I'm very
is.
Alien
comfortable with
Isolation.
0 points, but that's fine. Yeah.
With that,
It's
let's
on the
bring an
board
end to
now.
what was this week's episode of the Press Start podcast. Subscribe to us on Listener or the podcast service of your choice. Follow us at press.au and visit the site at pressstart.com.au. We've been joined today by Kieron.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at HASH_BRAUN.
Sharing his preview of Star Wars Jedi Survivor. It was James.
Yeah, I am on Twitter at OMGMoreJames.
And winning with the wiki this week, it was James.
It's in reference to me because you get James and you get more James. So,
Ah.
you can find me at Twitter on @JamesATJMZ. I got a hit tweet last week, guys.
Did you really?
I did. 50,000 views. I discovered a speed running technique in RE4.
Gee, how did I miss
Wow.
this tweet? I'm gonna have to go and check this out.
Yeah, amazing, hey.
And
I
I've
had
been
to
your
turn
host.
notifications off. I know how Gaga feels now.
And I've been your host,
Anyway.
Ewan Roxburgh. You can follow me on Twitter at Ewan_Roxburgh. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, happy gaming.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Press Start podcast. Now that I'm done, it's time to pick up the controller and get gaming. But not just any controller. It's time to pick up the PowerA Spectra Enhanced Wired Controller for the Nintendo Switch. It's available now in-store and online from JB Hi-Fi, and believe me when I say the Spectra Enhanced controller is one of the flashiest you can get for your Switch. Just check out some of these features. LED edge lighting with 8 colors to choose from, a 3.5mm headset jack, a 3-meter detachable USB cable, and a soft touch feel with awesome ergonomic design. With official licensing from Nintendo and a 2-year limited warranty, you know it'll deliver the goods every time you fire up your Nintendo Switch. Illuminate your gameplay these Easter holidays with a Spectra Enhanced wired controller for the Nintendo Switch, available at your local JB Hi-Fi store or online at jbhifi.com.au.